Yeah, yeah, yeah. Our next guest is a multiple Grammy Award winner and a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as the lead singer of Led Zeppelin. His most recent album is entitled Band of Joy. Please welcome Robert Plant, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, that rings a bell.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Were you on that originally?
The Honey Drippers, yes.
Yeah.
I did that with Robert, yes. The Honey Drippers thing.
We did it very quickly.
When you began your professional music career, you were pretty much a kid, right?
Yeah.
How old?
I was 14 and a half, semi-pro. And then...
What kind of stuff were you doing as a semi-professional?
We were trying to sound like we came out of Chicago, you know. And it's a bit difficult in Worcestershire. I see you were using some of our sauce earlier on. Thank you. Yeah, but yeah, you know, the whole thing about British music is that we've always looked across the pond. Mm-hmm. You know, our own music was always some kind of rip-off of an American thing.
It's fascinating you would say that, because then taking that as an influence, it came back to this continent in a whole new different presentation.
It's ironic because a lot of the music that I'm attached to now, and I'm learning about more and more all the time, is probably derived from Ireland and Scotland. A lot of the roots of the music down in the south.
And what you're talking about a traditional American folk music?
Yeah, the stuff in Tennessee and in, you know, in the Smoky Mountains, all that stuff. The Irish and the Scottish who came over, they brought the music with them, and it kind of goes round and round in circles. It's amazing.
And when you were a kid, though, you weren't listening to that kind of music. You were listening to nascent rock and roll, I guess. Who did you like when you were a kid?
Well, you know, the radio in the UK was pretty dire in the mid-50s. There was nothing going on at all. But now and again, they had this American Forces Network radio coming out of Germany. And if you were lucky, you'd hear Muddy Waters or Little Richard or something coming through the waves, the airwaves, and that was spectacular. Yeah. And I mean, the whole British pop culture was still celebrating just that post-war kind of stuff, you know, the kind of crooners, and bit by bit we started sort of miming rock and roll and, you know, trying to get it right, but we never really got it. We had our own stars, we had our mini Elvis guys and all that sort of thing, but...
And when you responded to that kind of music, did you respond to it because it reached something in you, or it was just exotic and coming out of the ether and from a whole different country you knew nothing about?
Well, that's probably, the latter is more the case. I mean, in truth, you know, little kids in England had no idea about big bad America, you know, and we didn't have the same cultural exchange that you've had. One way or another, you've come to terms with your, you know, sort of massive culture here, and we didn't have that. We didn't have Black America. We had Asian guys coming in. We had West Indian music a little bit. But we never had, you couldn't turn the dial on the radio and get an absolute amazing kaleidoscope of music, you know.
Do you remember the first time you heard Elvis Presley on the radio?
Yeah, I heard Heartbreak Hotel, and I heard the sound of his voice and the echo and this kind of exotic calling. So when I was in the bathtub one night, it didn't take long. Well, I pulled the plug out and I sat there till all the water went away, and I sang into the overflow, and I got this amazing sound. I went, wait a minute, that's me. And it came, the sound kind of came up through and just under my legs. And that's how I invented echo. Forget about Les Paul, he was not important at all.
Did you, and your paths must have eventually crossed with Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, spectacular for us, you know, absolutely amazing. He was involved with the same agents that we had at the time in the 70s, and he wanted to know who this bunch of guys were who was selling tickets quicker than him. And we wanted to know who we were too. And so he played the Forum in LA, and I'd seen him a couple of times. I was really so in awe of him as a singer. And And I loved the way he could send himself up, you know. I mean, when you've been doing, we're our one-trick ponies singers generally, and if you can't see the humour in it, and he did. So we met him after a show, and we went to the top floor of whatever the cheap hotel was, a couple of gorillas at the elevator, and they moved us down into this kind of holding station where it was one of those long suites where a door opens into another, like Get Smart or whatever it is, just on and on and on, you know. And the whole place was full of Sandra Dee, sort of Stella Stevens kind of, which is perfect for me. A pencil skirt and a beehive, and I've gone from some white stilettos shows your age. And then when the room was suitably full, the door opened at the end, and this guy came in, and he sort of moved around the couches like this and like that. He was actually doing his show. He was doing a better show in that suite than he was at night, you know, on the stage. And we talked for about an hour and a half. And
really?
But the amazing thing is that it was so natural, and it was so funny and
there
great.
was a rapport right there immediately. Yeah.
And of course, music was the key again.
Did you explain to him what his music and what he represented had meant to you?
Absolutely, yeah. And he was so aware of all the impersonators and stuff, and you can imagine how I feel. You know, through the 70s, everybody took their shirt off, but they just didn't have the right chest. You know.
I never did.
And now you see where it's ended me up, you know.
Did you ever mention to him how you incorporated your music in your career and your young time on stage? Did you?
Yeah. Well, he said, "Well, what do you guys? What's your music roots?" And we all got the same roots, you know. The sort of blues out of Memphis and Mississippi and stuff. And he said, "Well, you know, do you do a lot of rehearsals?" And of course, Led Zeppelin didn't really show up until the gig was almost over before we actually arrived in those days. And so we didn't do many sound checks, but when we did, I used to like to sing in those big arenas his songs because they sounded even bigger. So he said, "Well, which song do you like?" And I said, "Well, I like loads of them, but I do sing this song, Love Me. You know, treat me like a fool." So we talked, and then we said goodbye, shook hands, and said we'd all meet again. And I went out in the corridor and was heading for the elevator, and suddenly he swings around the door, and he says, "Hey, Robert," and he started singing to me, and then I started singing to him, and then we were all crying. It was
Robert Plant. Now you're coming back, and we will hear something from the Band of Joy with Robert Plant. We'll be right back.